Archiving started.
Hello, everyone. This is Jim McCormick, and for this week 4 WIMBA, I want to go over some things that will help you out with your GPA tracker assignment. That's your skills assignment for this week. And Microsoft Excel, for some of you who haven't used Excel before, this is a great program for really working with numbers, being able to do some calculations, and actually having the information look good, being able to format it the way you want to. So that's really the emphasis this week as you work on your GPA tracker assignment. Be able to do a little bit of formatting, working with column headers, etc., and then actually putting in formulas. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to pull open an Excel file that I've got kind of partially created. And you can see here, I started a file that is showing the names of some salespeople I got for my company that I got working for me. I got some column headings here. January says sales, February sales, total, and then total with the average, with the 10% increase, so then the average. So you can see my column headings right now, they're kind of cut off because of the width of the columns. And on your assignment, one of the first things you need to do is kind of work on your column headings to actually use text wrapping. So text wrapping allows your column headings or your row headings, whichever one you decide to use it on, to have more than one line of text showing in the cell. So an easy way to do this is you're going to go ahead and select the cells that have the column headings you want to do the text wrapping on. So in this case, I'm going to click on B2, hold down my left mouse button, and drag over to G2. So now I've got these cells selected. And up here on the Home tab, I'm going to come over in the alignment area and click on Wrap Text. So that'll allow me to, again, have multiple lines of text showing in one cell for my column headings. So I click on that. And now you can see what that does. It actually allows us now to really kind of easily see what those column headings are saying. And that's really kind of a good thing to use a lot of times with column headings because obviously if you have more than 2 or 3 words, if you went ahead and just kind of expand out the width of the columns, with one line of text, it would make it, much wider than you would need to, maybe based on the size of the numbers you've got in your columns going down the data range. All right, so I've got my column headings now with text wrapping. And while I got these cells selected, I can do some other things with these cells as well. So I can go ahead and maybe bold them if I want to, so they stand out a little bit better. I can go ahead and center them in the cells that they're in. And again, those are some standard things you may want to do as you're working on column headings on a regular basis. Now, one thing you'll notice now, I want to just click anywhere in my range here on my sheet to deselect those cells. You can notice now in column B, I still have some names being chopped off. So I got enough of a width of a column to see my name heading, but I'm not seeing the total name for John Smith or Steve Adams, etc. So what you can do up here to kind of auto size these columns based on the biggest entry you got in that column is you come to the right edge of the column heading. So right now I'm on the right edge of column B. You'll see I get a double-headed arrow on either side of my mouse pointer. So that means I can go ahead now, if I double-click my left mouse button, it'll auto-size the column for the largest entry in the column. And certainly while it's doing this, it'll maintain the centering I did on my column headings previously. So that works pretty well. And again, it's really a nice trick if you've got some larger entries in your column and you want to just get big enough to handle that biggest entry in your column. All right, one last thing I can show you that I'll go ahead and work on a few formulas here would be, I've got some numbers here. These numbers are actually dollar amounts based on the sales that these people have been doing in the last 2 months. So I'm going to go ahead and select these. So I'll be selecting cells C3 through D6. So this is a range I'm selecting. And at this point, I can go ahead and click over here, again, the Home tab I'm on. Come over here in the number area of the ribbon, and I'm going to click on the accounting number format. And they'll go ahead put in the dollar signs in front, give me a comma sign after the first number, since I've got 4 numbers, a thousands numbers showing up. And it looks pretty good. Now, the other thing I can do here is I've got some decimal numbers, 0.00 showing up for all these numbers. I don't really need those because with any of my sales amounts, let's say in this situation, I'm not going to have any cents ever showing up. So over here in the number area, I've got an increased decimal button that would put in more numbers after the decimal point, which I don't want, or I can go to decrease decimal button. And with all these cells selected, I can click it once, get rid of one of the decimal numbers after the decimal point, And I'll click it again. And that totally gets rid of my numbers after the decimal point, gets rid of the decimal point itself. I still have my dollar sign and still have my comma up there for my thousands. And so that just looks a little bit better. And so it's a nice, easy way to kind of handle formatting as you're working with numbers that are actually dollar amounts. All right, now I'm going to put in some formulas here. And one thing here I'm going to do is I'm going to start off in cell E3. And I need a total formula, so I need to add up the numbers here in cells C3 and D3. The big thing in Excel is you always need to start a formula with an equal sign. So no matter what else you do in the formula, you got to have an equal sign at the start of the formula. Otherwise, if you put in C3 plus D3 in the cell right now, I'll just show you as an example. Oops. Let me start over again. Sorry about my dog barking. Now, I've had a lot of students actually do this. Well, they'll type in C3 plus D3. They think that's a formula. Well, it's most of the formula, but there's no equal sign. So if there's no equal sign in front, you basically just have a C3 plus D3 text line staring you in the face. And that's not going to calculate anything for you. I've actually had students turn in assignments with these kind of formulas because they think it's correct, and it's not. So in order to make this correct, what I want to do is I'm going to click back here in the formula bar and put in an equals sign. And when I do that, it actually then becomes a formula that Excel will recognize. So I've got equal sign here equals C3 plus D3. And now I'll go ahead and hit enter. And now I've got my total in here, 5,700. Now the other thing I want to point out is that whenever you do formulas in Excel, you always want to use cell references. So you notice I use C3 plus D3. Some students will want to put in a formula that would say equals 2,500 plus 3,200. That'll give you the right answer, but now if you do that, you're not going to be able to do what I'm going to be doing here in the next step, which is actually copying the formula down the rest of the cells in this column. So I've created one formula to do this total. Now I need to get the totals for Steve Adams, Rachel Jones, and Shelley Caldwell. When I have the cell selected, you'll notice there's a little black box in the lower right corner. That's referred to as a fill handle. And when I put my mouse pointer right over that fill handle, I get a little crosshair symbol. So I want to click and hold down my left mouse button and drag down to that last cell I want that formula in, which is E6. I can release my mouse button. And now you'll see I got totals put in for the next 3 cells. And you also notice that the formula has auto-adjusted for the row that I was copying that formula into. So you can see in the first one that was copied down equals C4 plus D4. The columns are still the same. I'm getting a different row reference. Since I was copying down this column, my row reference was indeed changing. So this is what's referred to the formula I just copied down as a formula with relative references. Relative reference means there's no special symbols such as dollar signs that will make those numbers or those cell references stick in that formula and not change. Since these are relative cell references, they will change as you copy a formula either down a column or across a row. So I think it's this week or next week we'll be looking at a discussion question in the forum about absolute versus relative references. Well, a big advantage of relative references is if everything else needs to be changed, but the basic idea of the formula, the basic premise of the formula is going to be the same from one cell to another. You can use relative cell references in your formulas, use this copy operation I just showed you, and your formulas will work out fine. They'll just based on where you're copying that formula to. All right, now my next column, I'm going to do a total with 10% increase. What this means is I want to know what the total would be if my salespeople did better in the first 2 months and I actually had a 10% sales increase. What would that value be? So again, I'm going to click on that cell I want that formula in, and I'm going to type in equals. Now I want to multiply this reference or the cell that has a 5,700 in it, so I want to click on that cell. That's another way to build a formula. Click in the cell that you want to actually put in your formula, so it automatically inserts it in my cell in my formula bar. And then I'm going to multiply that by 1.1. So this is an example of where I need to actually type in a number. So sometimes you may need to type in a number that's not actually readily available elsewhere on your worksheet. So in this case, I've got equals E3 times 1.1. So I'm going to hit the enter. And now you can see, if I come back up here, take a look, my formula is showing an increase of 10% of 5,700. So 5,700 plus 570, that does equal 6,270. So I do go ahead and I've got the right answer in cell F3 with 6,270 showing. And again, now I've got the cell selected. I can go ahead and copy this formula down this range of cells. And again, these formulas are changing based on the row changing as I make that copy operation. So I've got E5 times 1.1, E6 times 1.1, and of course E4 times 1.1 right below my original one that I did. So again, a good example here of using a mixture of references and also numbers in a formula. Last column, we need to do an average. So an average, just like you would think in real math, taking some values, multiplying by a number of entries that you're adding things up for, and you get your average. Now in Excel's got a lot of different things called functions. Functions are basically pre-made formulas. So I'm going to go ahead and just type out the word average. You can see it basically is asking me if this is what I want. So I can click on that. And or you just type it out directly. There's a lot of different ways of doing this. Now, when I use a function like this, I'm going to go ahead and put in a parentheses, start parentheses or left parentheses, and now I got to tell Excel what cells I want to have included as this average function works against. So I want to average up these two cells under January and February columns. So in this case, it's going to be cells C3 and D3. So I can click and drag across to include those two cells. You see they automatically get included as a range in this formula now inside of parentheses C3 colon D3. That means you're including C3 and D3, and the average function is going to work against those two cells and nothing else. So up here on my formula bar, another way to kind of lock in this formula, then you see a little green arrow checkbox. That's the enter button. So I click on that. I'll keep that cell selected. Locked in my formula or enter my formula into that cell. So I just did that, and now I've got an average of 2850 showing for when I add 2500 and 3200. That gives me a total of 5700. So indeed, my average is 2850. I will go ahead now and actually go to my fill handle, click, and drag down, and I can get the average formula put into the remaining cells in that column. One last thing I can do, go back to column F. I can see I've got some decimal numbers after the one decimal point. When I did the 10% increase, that was based on I used that number of 1.1. So because I had 1.1 there, added in that number after the decimal point, I can go ahead and select these cells and get rid of that decimal place or that number after the decimal place by again clicking on the decrease decimal button in my number area off the Home tab. So I'll go ahead and do that. And I've got that all taken care of. So hopefully this little video has helped you with some of the things you're going to be doing in this assignment. And if you have any questions throughout the week, please contact me. Thank you.